Hello and welcome back to the Comic Literate podcast, the podcast that does deep dives into the best of comic books, graphic novels, mangas, and penny dreadfuls. I'm your host, the soon-to-be-known as Comic Stan, and with me, as always, is my jovial co-host, it's Jamie.
Hello, mate.
Jovial as always.
Jovial as always, baby. It's always a Monday when we record, and I'm always in a fantastic mood.
To be fair, this improves my Mondays, so...
Aw, mine too.
Cool. So, I mean, what are you going to do? Sit home and lol about the fact, like, oh, I've got 4 days left to the weekend. It's like, nah, let's just record a podcast.
Yeah, let's just get into it.
And speaking of, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I mean, it's been a long weekend here in the UK, isn't it?
Yep, it's been not to give too much of a clue of how far in advance we record these, but it's been a bank holiday. So
it has been a bank holiday.
If you want to do the research, for the non-UK people, if you want to do the research to find out when we record, by all means, get your big board up with all the
string.
Clippings and the string and the Charlie from Always Sunny and all that.
Well, Jamie said he was in a bad mood, so it must have been a rainy Monday.
I mean, is that all that it takes to get in a bad mood, or is that...
No, I quite like the rain.
Yeah, rain is fun. Rain is good.
I'm a Norfolk boy. We like rain around here.
I mean, we have to, or you're just going to be depressed all the time.
Yeah, well, you know, rain means a good harvest, doesn't it?
It does. It does mean a good harvest. Whether that still applies in the modern day or not, I have no idea.
Rain means my turnips are going to grow, my man.
Why would you mention our county slogan like that? So for our non-UK listeners, they might not quite understand all that, or even our non-Norfolk potentially non-Norfolk listeners.
You know what Norwich's slogan is?
What is it?
That's fine city.
Yeah,
and then Norfolk's is Nelson's County.
Yeah,
we'd picked one interesting person and just named our entire county.
I mean, we had a limited pool to choose from, let's be honest.
It was him or Stephen Fry, and I think they named it before Stephen Fry was born. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
They could be like, let's give it another few years. Maybe someone in Morrissey will be born soon, and they'll do something. You know, I was listening to a American podcast, and they mentioned British people because a wrestling shows take place in the UK. And the way one of them referred to British people, because British people were basically like arguing online about the quality of this card, the wrestling show they were getting. And one of the American listeners referred to the British people. It's like, I know for fans of the podcast, the beans on toast people. And I was like, I went full James Acast. I was like, never have been so offended by something that I 100% agree with. Like, that is an accurate representation of the British people.
Yeah, 100%. We are the beans on toast people.
I don't think any other country has, or any other culture has beans on toast.
No, it's foul as well.
I mean, it depends. Like, you get some sauce in there, maybe some lean parents, a bit of cheese. Like, it can be something.
Baked beans are foul.
Depends which beans you're eating.
Also not British.
That's surprising.
They're American. Heinz is an American company. It was an American invention.
But if you say beans in America, they think like the bigger beans.
Barbecue beans that come with barbecue.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I've heard are really good because they have pulled pork in them over there.
Well, yeah, it depends what you add, isn't it? But baked beans is like straight from the can, don't add anything else. Like that's the British way, isn't it?
Unseasoned.
That's to describe England better than calling us beans on toast people, just call us unseasoned. That is like sums it up perfectly.
We're deeply cultured but unseasoned.
Yes, exactly. So this week you might have seen from the unusual title that actually I think I need to check my notes real quick here, because it seems this week we seem to be doing an educational comic.
Yeah, this is educational this is edutainment.
Edutainment, not edgy entertainment, which is also us sometimes.
This is edutainment. I've been pushing for over a year, and finally I've got some edutainment in there. I'm very excited.
Folks, this is the only way I could keep him recorded. This is the only way I could keep him on the podcast.
This is such a Jamie episode, isn't it? So this week we are talking about the graphic
novel adaptation?
Yeah, graphic adaptation.
I've got a blurb. Do you want me to...
Of Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari.
Do you want me to do the little blurb for the...
Go on, then.
Because this is the non-fiction one, so this isn't you having to sum up the story, so I can do
This is you having to wrestle with the big words.
Well, I copied it. I got the pronunciations of the name, so let's see if we get that correct. So, Sapiens, A Graphic History, is an epic, radical adaptation of Yuval Noah Harari's best-selling book into a graphic novel series bursting with wit, humor, pop culture references, and colorful illustrations. Harari, his co-writer, has teamed up with renowned comic artists David Vandermeulen, co-writer, and Daniel Casanave, illustrator, to retell the story of humankind in a way that will captivate all adults and young adults, including those who don't usually read science and history books, which is right up my alley because I do not read those.
No, and I do.
Yeah. I actually said to someone at some point that someone asked me, oh, when's the last book you read? And I had to think back to a proper book. And I mentioned Sapiens. They're like, oh, you read Sapiens? I had to do well, I'm reading the comic book adaptation. And you could see the, in their face. Didn't mention why I was reading it.
I think what really amused me here is that the speaker, like the narrative voice of Mr.
Yuval?
Harari. Yeah, we're on first name.
We've read his work, so we're on first name.
We're on first name terms now.
Mr. Harari.
So Yuval addresses the reader directly, obviously, in the book. Whereas in the comic book, he does so via his pre-adolescent niece. And I think that's really funny because it's like, it makes it very clear that he's like, ugh, you weren't switched on enough to read my book.
I mean, to be fair, I was going to make the point that it's a great vehicle for the entire comic book.
No.
So one thing to get across straight off the point, we're not going to get into the the context of the scientific.
Well, not if Ryan can help it. I'm all for it. I'm gunning for that.
Well, my argument was this isn't the podcast to do it. I think the problem is there's much more learned people than you or I.
Oh, certainly.
Who would have a much better take on the actual sustenance of the writings here.
Yes.
But what we can do is we can judge it on how well it conveys the information by the medium that we know very well. So that's what we're getting into. For reference,
I have read the book.
Which you have a different perspective going into the comic.
Yeah, absolutely. I read the book a few years ago, and it is everything that it's cracked up to be. Fully deserved to be a bestseller. I thought it was probably one of the best pieces of populist nonfiction I'd read for a long time. Maybe since, it was the best piece of populist nonfiction I'd read since Natives and Chavs. And that puts it on, a pedestal of popular nonfiction. Those are both fucking excellent. And this was really good as well. Very dense, though. Yes.
And so, first off, impressions. I would say it was a great comic for conveying the information that it has. Yeah. We're going to get into the techniques and the little tools and devices that it uses to do that. It kept things interesting. The illustrations, which are all hand-drawn, apparently, by the artist. So there's a video I saw on YouTube, and you can literally see So I was searching the artist's name to get the pronunciation, because my cheat code for that is if they've been interviewed on YouTube, some host goes, and now my guest, and then I'm writing down the
phonetics,
the phonetic writing. Yeah,
that's good research. That's sage.
It takes me whole 10 minutes, so it's the least I could do.
Absolutely.
But with him, I found a video on Mr. Harari's YouTube page, and it had the artist literally doing doing one in kind of a sped up video. So you see him literally drawing one of the pages from the comic. So,
and they do look great, don't they?
They look great. They have the newspaper comic vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Which we've not really delved into yet, have we?
No, and I think it works very well with educational stuff or non-fiction stuff, because it gets it makes it feel a bit more relaxed. You're not worrying. It doesn't look like something that you need to pay hard attention to. And I think that conveys the information well, especially if someone who's picking it up who doesn't know any of this information, which is why you'd be reading something like this in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you made a point earlier that off air that the comic was you said something along the lines of was it a criticism of the book that it was that it wasn't strictly a scientific written text?
Well, no. So I've discussed this book with a bunch of people,
right?
Because I really wanted to talk about it when I read it. It was really interesting. And I have subsequently spoken about it with some people who have anthropology degrees. And they said that certain people in the anthropological community do question some of what he says.
Right.
And so this is very much, he comes out very early on. He makes it quite clear in both the book and the comic book that he's not an anthropologist or a scientist.
Yes, and he says that right at the top of this. Yeah.
He's a historian. And so what he's doing is taking the anthropological history of humans and presenting it as a history, as opposed to as a hard piece of science. And I think that's what makes the book so interesting, is because he's taking something that would usually be reported as science and reporting it as narrative.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that means that any of it's apocryphal, because he is very good at citing his sources, because he is a university professor. So he is a scholar, and it's very scholarly in the way he presents it. But of course, to undertake a history of humanity that is as far-reaching and as broad as this, there are points where it has to lack depth, and I think that's what they were commenting on. But that's the critique of people who are used to reading scholarly articles, which are by their nature very, very specific and very deep.
Very clinically written and just conveying pure information only.
Well, yeah, that, but also on a very narrow topic. So you wouldn't write a journal article that covered the entirety of human history from our evolution, from our shared ancestors with the other homos.
And technically from the Big Bang to now.
100%. Like, it's a huge undertaking. And I think it's the same critique that people have of all populist scholarly work. The same critique that people had of Stephen Hawking's work. It's the same critique that people have of Brian, what was his name? Brian Cox.
Yep.
Brian Cox's work.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson to a degree.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson, yeah, absolutely. These populist academics who are actually trying to convey these huge ideas to a wider audience. The scholarly community will sometimes say, well, you've oversimplified that, or you've taken some depth out there and you've made that seem more simple than it needs to be. But of course you have to do that when you're writing something this big. And also you're not writing it for a scholarly audience, you're writing it to become a bestseller, which this did.
Yeah. And in a more pragmatic way, they are trying to convey information to people who might not normally be into this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
To be like, hey, here's some information that I've translated from the very clinical, scholarly writings, and I've presented it in a way where you can understand it.
And the other thing is he's condensed information from a lot of different fields. So we read maybe the first 80 to 100 pages of the comic. We didn't read all of it because it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, I've got my copy of the book in front of me. It is about 460, 470 page long book. So to take that amount of information and spread it out over comic books, it needs to be vast. And so we read the first 80 pages of the comic, which to my mind translated to maybe the first 20 pages of the book.
Yeah, but what I think helped is that the techniques and everything the book uses are very evident over the 80 pages. So
yeah, absolutely. I think I got a really great idea of what they were trying to achieve there. Particularly as somebody who's read the book and kind of saw the difference in presentation, I was like, yeah, I get it. I get what they're doing.
And the point I was going to make was the fact that this is a kind of book that, again, makes a kind of narrative. I think maybe that's what made it like not necessarily easier, but like a more obvious book to translate into the comic book adaptation or graphic novel adaptation, because this comic or graphic novel, whatever, has a narrative that I think is exclusively used to get across the information in a way that people will understand, where the character is the writer, Mr. Harari, and he's talking to his niece, who is asking all these questions about humans and society and where we came from and everything.
But the fascinating thing is that he brings in the people that he sourced and the people whose like actual hard academic work he references in the book, he brings them in as characters.
Exactly.
And that's so clever, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that's such a great way of lending it credence.
It personalizes the information.
Yeah, absolutely. So the opening passage, for instance, goes quite deeply into zoology and classification of animals and the way that animals are organized in orders and classes and species and subspecies and things like that. And the point that they're trying to get across is that we think of Homo sapiens, the species that we belong to, as being the only humans, but actually Homo is the Latin prefix that was given to all animals in the order human. And then one step below that is us, Homo sapiens, but there was also Neanderthals and all these other different types of human that we possibly coexisted with, possibly genocided, we're not 100% sure. But he brings in the zoologist that he references in the book as a character in the comic book to help explain that. And I think that was really beautifully done.
Yes, 100%. And just as a side note, if, obviously reading this as a adult person trying to become educated, but you have to admit that it's never not going to be funny seeing the words Homo erectus. It's just not, and it's something I feel like if someone reads this, go, am I all right for laughing at that? You can't help it. It's ingrained in our DNA.
But I think this is the thing. It kind of lifts the curtain back on the language and the fact that homosexual is a term that homo derives from the Latin expression to mean the same as.
Yeah.
And so all of the early human species are classified in the order Homo because they were all the same as us. They were all human, right? And yeah, no, I get it. Homo erectus is funny.
Yeah. And speaking of humor, obviously that was not intended humor. That is just us being children.
Yeah.
But there are little bits of humor which I wouldn't describe any bits necessarily as like properly laugh out loud funny, but they add a levity to everything which keeps it very interesting, and especially a younger audience I think would like if you gave this to a child, like that kind of, if they can grapple with some of the more complex terms and concepts, the humor can keep them engaged as well.
This would be a really advanced reader. Like if you were giving this to a child, I would say that you could comfortably give this to a relatively bright secondary school child.
Yeah.
Like, you know, kind of for our listeners in other parts of the world, secondary school's high school. So like maybe adolescent. You could give this to like an adolescent teenager and they'd be able to make sense of it in a way they might not actually be able to make sense of the book. Because the book is the book's funny and it's interesting, but it's dry because it's anthropology. And anthropology is quite dry unless you're into it.
Yeah, and again, this comic just adds a little bit of life, color, and levity to everything.
And it's beautifully illustrated, as Ryan was saying. I didn't know it was all done by hand, but now that I think back to the illustrations, they are gorgeous.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, because this was a piece of, like, not scholarly work, but because this is a piece of nonfiction, one of the things that the illustrations really strive to do is be accurate. And so when you're looking at those illustrations of all the different species in the order human, all the different types of human as well as us, they're all pretty nailed on for what we think those people actually looked like.
Well, I was actually going to make the point that there does seem to be distinctly two styles of drawing people and animals, and it's either a realistic one, because as you say, they're demonstrating something or they're showing examples of or something, and then when it becomes less about being visually accurate, it then slips into more the newspaper cartoony vibe.
Yeah.
And I think it's important it does that, because you can tell just intuitively, you go, oh, this is like hard example, like this is like realistic, this is you could quote this, and then the cartoony stuff is, you know, keeps it fun and interesting.
Yeah, and there are some really fun specific techniques that are being used here that you do see pop up in populist superhero comics.
Yeah.
So the metafiction thing.
You mean breaking the fourth wall?
Well, no. So breaking the fourth wall and metafiction are two different things.
Right.
So in the purely classical sense, when you are like when you're assessing literature at like a university level or like a scholarly level, metafiction is fiction within fiction.
Right.
And so the moments where the little girl shows her comic book and it all becomes a bit more cartoony because they are using a comic within a comic to demonstrate some of the ideas that are being displayed.
Yeah.
That's metafiction, in my opinion.
Or a common thing here was reality TV shows.
Oh, wasn't that so clever?
Yeah. It definitely it made light of like some of the more drier concepts.
Yeah.
Turning like evolution into a game show and things like that. What the sense I kind of got from it, and this might be a weird take for anyone who doesn't know the reference, but it reminded me a lot of the original like Cosmos TV show with Carl Sagan. So they would literally, not necessarily, they wouldn't do like reality TV show and stuff, but there was this like fictional ship that would like fly to stuff. I'm more going by the Neil deGrasse Tyson reboot, but they would like travel to these places and observe physics and like amazing things happening.
And that's definitely a feature of like educational TV content pitched at children, isn't it?
Yeah. There
will be a vehicle through which somebody goes to explore something. Great example of that, really vintage British example, is Mr. Ben.
Yep, I remember that. He used to like always like fly to a different place or something in a plane, was it?
No, Mr. Ben went to a clothes shop.
That was it. He
tried on an outfit and then through the back of the changing room went to a place. But he would like explore the jungle and he'd go explore these different places.
Was that a white man in the jungle? Absolutely nothing could go wrong.
Yeah, if you're not British and you've not seen Mr. Ben, it's a great time.
I'll tell you what as well, more recent reference, it reminded me a little bit of Horrible Histories.
Fuck yeah. Oh, Horrible Histories was so good.
Horrible Histories was good.
Did you read the books as a kid?
Yeah, I had the Horrible Science as well. So I was more of a science than a history, but like it did all the same stuff.
I had both, and oh man, Horrible Histories was so good. Do you know a lot of the guys who wrote that are proper serious historians?
I assumed that because they had the information. What I liked was that a lot of the actors in it were became bigger comedy actors.
Yeah.
So not often do you get kid show actors going on to like bigger and better stuff.
Yeah.
But that's how good Horrible Histories was like adults were like, oh, this is actually funny.
Yeah.
Like it's still that childish humor, but when it's top tier of that style, it appeals to a wider audience.
The best of anything is good, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think this was, if not directly inspired by it, at least indirectly inspired by this kind of style.
Yeah.
Especially with the humor in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about a lot since I read it is why hasn't this been done before? Why don't we present more of our adult nonfiction as graphic nonfiction, right? Because this works. As far as I'm concerned, this is a really great way of conveying the big ideas that he's grappling with, because again, one of the last pieces of non-fiction I read, we talked about it a lot on the podcast because it became a big joke amongst my friends, was the book about cod, right?
Yep.
And the way I see it, there are two ways that you can do non-fiction. You can either take something really specific and really examine it in such a way that you start to see aspects of the world outside that thing come into play, right?
Right.
So through studying cod really, really heavily, you start to see aspects of like empire come through.
Just clarify, again, we're not talking about the Call of Duty game, we're talking about the fish.
Yeah, but if you look at anything deeply enough, you'll start to find that the place in which that thing interfaces with the rest of the world is interesting, and you see history, right? What Yuval Harari's done here is zoom all the way the fuck out and look at the entirety of human history all in one go. And so the idea of having something that broad, that's a huge topic, isn't it? Presenting it in this graphic medium makes it more easily digestible. And so I think it was a really great idea. And then I kind of think about the level of scholarship, because of course, when you're consuming nonfiction, you have to consider how good your sources are. Like, how good is this source of nonfiction that I'm reading? How well sourced is it? How true is it? Or is it largely apocryphal? And I think about the levels of scholarship in this, and I think, well, it's no less scholarly than a really well-made BBC Nature documentary. This is as scholarly as David Attenborough's work.
Yeah.
And I hold that in really high accord.
Yeah.
You know?
I actually made the note, I called this in my notes the perfect example of nonfiction translated into comics.
Yeah.
You can have your takes, I think, on like the writing style or the humor or whatever. But this as a blueprint is, I think, the base blueprints to work by. But if someone else was like, I want to make an educational comic, I'd be like, read this one and use that as a jumping off point.
100%, yeah, because it's so good, isn't it? I do have a question for you though, Ryan.
Well, one thing, before your question, I was quickly say, when you say about covering the whole topic, one thing that made me think is, because it's aimed, I think, at young adults, what made me think was, when a young adult, once they're presented with like evolution and all that teachings, I think a young child to young adult could quite easily then turn around and go, okay, so how did humans evolve from monkeys? This, I think, it's such a long text, but it covers that entire point because that's such a common question from kids and young adults first learning evolution.
And it's such a common misconception that we evolved from monkeys.
And not alongside them.
And this answers it really beautifully, doesn't it?
That was like a Christian thing where it's like, well, if we evolved from monkeys, then how come monkeys are still here? It's like, read this book.
Yeah,
That's
read
why.
this book. What? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating that he said, and he put it quite aptly, that the same pre-evolutionary animal that both us and the monkeys evolved from could have given birth to the last one of its species before they started becoming chimps, and also the last one of its species before we started becoming us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's mind-blowing. And the idea that there was a point in time that us and the other humans were able to interbreed a little bit sometimes and produce fertile offspring, but then our evolutionary paths diverged enough that we weren't the same species anymore. Fascinating, because there's an idea presented in the book, and again, I don't want to get too heavy into the science of it, but I think this is a really great example of how well the scholarship is dealt with. So there is an idea that there were different species of humans that existed alongside early Homo sapiens, and that they were localized to different parts of the world, and there was some interbreeding between those humans and the early Homo sapiens that lived near them that were a contributing factor to humans looking different from different parts of the world.
I picked up on that bit as well. And if I was going to mention any actual of the science, that was going to be the part, because I saw that and thought that's a great explanation for why just different features in different races.
Yeah, and I think but again, it goes into that theory, and it's one of two theories that are still being debated by anthropologists, right?
There's a new bit of evidence that'll affirm one or the other every once in a while.
Yeah, well, this is it. Yeah, and they're two convergent ideas that currently exist. But the reason that anthropologists really pushed away from that idea, that different Homo sapiens from different parts of the world have different bits of other human genuses in our genome, is because wouldn't that be fucking convenient for the racists?
But so I thought about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to say a bit more before I give it counterpoint?
because that was a huge idea during Empire, that white Europeans were genetically different and that we were different species, and it really allowed
cranial sizes and all that bollocks.
Yeah. And it was like the cornerstone of the argument that people used to enslave other humans, right? And so the anthropologists at a certain point went, even though there's some evidence for that, that's fucking detrimental, because it feeds the one thing that we don't want to keep feeding in humanity. So let's draw away from that. And I think the thing that's really brilliant here is that it feeds into the one thing we don't want to keep feeding in humanity, which is our insane aggression towards people who don't look like us.
Yeah.
And so Harari introduces that idea, but then also talks about the history of that idea and the fact that anthropologists pulled away from it, and that there was more evidence to suggest that we just genocided the other humans and that we couldn't interbreed with them.
As if that's better. Like,
well, I mean, in the short term, in the immediate short term, while there were some humans that were busy enslaving other ones, I think it made a lot of sense not to explore too deeply the idea that we had literal different DNA from other species of early humans knocking about in our genome. And now we're not in a post-racial society, I don't think. I still think racism is very prevalent. But I think we're in a slightly more evolved society. And actually, we're maybe a little bit ready for that idea to be reintroduced, particularly as there's been some recent evidence that lends it with at least even a little bit of credence. But what's interesting is that he is willing to engage that idea, but also willing to talk about the reasons why the scientific community turned away from it and are now turning back to it. And I thought that was a really great piece of scholarship.
So I've got some hot takes on this, and I think this is fair enough. I think, like, again, email address comicliterate@gmail.com. Like, if you disagree in any way, please write in. Like, let's engage and get the discussion going, right? I think got 2 points. First is the idea that people could use this. Like, I understand it. I get, like, saying that there's DNA differences between races or whatever, and that people would use this the wrong way. Like, I totally get where that's coming from. But if you use that as a basis for any of that kind of ideology, you're also subscribing to the idea, because they're intrinsically linked, that the most purest humans are African.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
So first off, if any idiots try and use that as like, well, this proves that some races are superior to others, like, you can only be referring to the Africans, because they are the cradle of life. Like, that's where humans come from. So if you're talking about pure humans or pure Homo sapiens,
sapiens come from.
Yeah, if you're talking about pure Homo sapiens, look at Africans. Like, that's the only way you can go at that. So the idea, because we know the people who would use this the wrong way are specifically white racists.
Yeah, it's the white racists. It's racist white people.
That was my first point. Like, idiots would use this in the most wrong way, and that's just going to happen with anything. And my second point is, I don't think maybe this is an ideological thing. I don't think scientists of any kind should be, or any scientific, like researchers or whoever, I don't think they should be making decisions on what they what scientific theory they should or should not pursue based on people's responses to it. I think, like, I don't know if this is I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. Like, again, please write in if you think it is. But I think scientists should be the community of people who chase the hard facts and the hard data.
I agree with you. I do agree with you, but it brings into question something about science that I think we all kind of like to ignore because we like to think in facts, whereas actually science is a set of narratives. And that becomes really apparent once you start to study science at a higher level. So when you study science in school, you are told one thing, and it's a story about the way a thing works, right? And then you get into like A level, like, later secondary, and stuff becomes a bit more technical.
This is like later high school for Americans.
Yeah. And stuff becomes a bit more technical, and you get told, actually, we kind of lied to you.
We simplified it earlier, yeah.
And we created this narrative, and now we're giving you a new narrative. And then when you get to like university level science, you're going to get another narrative for the way this thing works. And then you get to the postgraduates who are just dealing in hard facts.
Right.
They are like, you get to a certain level in science and you stop being taught a narrative of the way that things work and you start examining facts and figures. But even then, you're creating a narrative around them.
Would you say that the postgraduates, that's the point when you go, we don't know what's correct. All we know is the hard data.
Yeah, and this is it. Once you get a data set, the next stage, the stage at which you present a data set and you write a paper about it and you present the findings of your experiment, that's the point at which you create a narrative around these data points.
Right.
Like there are two kind of distinct functions that a scientist, and particularly a scientific communicator, like Harari or like Tyson or like Cox.
Mike Tyson, for anyone wondering.
He's a very articulate man. I'd read Mike Tyson's take on the world. There's something that these people are doing, which is creating a narrative around these ideas to present them. All science is story. It's just modern myth with facts and figures, as far as I'm concerned. And that's not to devalue science. I think we are searching and examining the universe to try and find truth in it. But I think part of the way we do that is to tell a story about it. And I think
it depends on the science, because if you're talking about like particles or subatomic particles, the story becomes more clinical, and then as you zoom out, you get more
let's
context.
Talk about subatomic physics.
Do you want me to cut out those, or do you want me to leave those?
No, leave them in.
Right.
I'm not a fucking physicist. The way the language that we use to talk about subatomic particles, we talk about them as whirring and turning, and like we have
bonding and separating, and
yeah. And actually, at the subatomic level, when we use a term like whirring or spinning, it does not mean that, but it's a narrative term that we use so that we can understand this concept that's been examined through data points.
Contextualizes it for our viewpoint.
Yeah, but even for the viewpoint of the person who is actually looking at those raw data points. So those highly educated people are building an experiment to test a theory. A theory is a story that they're telling about the universe. I think the universe works in this way, and I'm going to explain it using these terms.
Right.
And then they test that and they say, yes, those subatomic particles are doing the thing I think they're doing. How do I describe it? They're whirring, they're spinning, they're bonding.
The results are in line with the theory.
The results are in line with the theory, but they're both narrative theories. Like it's all narrative, isn't it?
The fun begins when they get that, they get the results that support the theory, and then 50 years later, someone else gets some other ones, goes, well, this is also true. And they go, oh, fuck, we got to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, 100%. And so, I mean, I think as humans, we don't like to examine the relative verisimilitude of the things we know too deeply, because it brings into question what we do, what even knowing something means.
Yeah.
And that's when you deal with high level scholarship, that's something you have to think about. And so something like this takes all of those ideas from all of these disparate fields that he's working with. You know, he's talking about zoology and human culture and language and technology towards the end of the book. Like, he really gets into it. But he's bringing all these ideas together in a way that can only exist if you create a narrative around them.
And this actually goes hand in hand with why we're talking about the comic in the first place is the narrative of the comic, specifically Mr. Harari talking to his niece, is literally her asking like a child's questions. And the point of the comic, and obviously it's what is adapted from the book, is if you're a normal person who's not a scientist or anything, you have these questions that a child would have. Here's the answers as we can best condense them for you.
And to be fair, his niece is an incredibly precocious child.
I mean, she has to be for the story. It would be like if Mr. R is like, hey, do you want to know about where Homo sapiens come from? The kid's like, nah.
Nah, I'm going to play some fucking Zelda, bruv.
Yeah. So I'm watching Markiplier. Okay, boomer.
I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
We've been playing a game recently with some comics that don't do swears.
Yes.
So there is a theory that was presented by some of the Lord of the Rings cast that a film can be PG-13 even if it has one swear word in it. And so a fun game that I like to play with anything that I read now or watch is this PG-13? Does it have swears? If not, where would you put the one swear? Where would you put the swear?
I've got the perfect answer. I'm just going to double check the page. So we were talking about, well, I don't think we've actually touched on the page layout yet. Page layout is all over the place, and it has to be.
Yeah.
Because at some points, it's giving a lot of information at points, so it needs smaller panels to skip through. Other times, it's larger diagrams of like maps or like big examples, you know, the monkey becoming the inter-betweens to the human. It has to do these big spreads to get across information, right? But there's also, and I was reading that going, the page layout is a bit clinical. And it has to be. Like, that's not a knock at it. It's just an observation of this style. But there's one particular one. It's actually the page that I stopped off at before you then told me where you got to and I caught up. But it felt like a good stopping off point. And there's a big one-page spread of Mr. Harari looking out on a big landscape. And it's generally...
Isn't it beautiful?
It's a beautiful one. Huge credit to the artist. Yeah. I think this is where he got to play a little bit with, like, you know, being a bit more aesthetically minded rather than, you know, diagram?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And in the line, Mr. Harari says, he's capping off talking about humans going off in all different directions and new lands. And he says, they also left behind the last human species. And then it's one bubble up here, and then you see this big sprawling mountain cloud thing with his back to the reader, looking out onto it with a one leg kind of hiked up like a proud explorer kind of pose.
Intrepid.
And then I would have him say, the line is, they also left behind the last human species, us. Fucking Sapiens. That's why I put it.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's magic. I think the one for me would be, you know, when the zoologist is talking about the two conflicting theories about whether or not early sapiens could breed with the other humans.
Was it, I'm trying to remember, it was the lovers versus the killers or fighters?
Yeah, and it was the other panel where she basically says the other theory is that we basically just committed a bunch of genocide, and it would be, we just committed a whole lot of fucking genocide.
Yeah, but in a really solemn, sad way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a somber swear, not an excited swear or an angry swear.
Mine was an inspirational swear.
Yeah, homo fucking sapiens.
Because if there's anything that I think I would like to get across on this podcast, like across episodes, is swearing, and especially the word fuck, has amazing versatility as a word.
Yes, it's a beautiful word.
It might be the greatest word in the English language. And I say that not just as someone who enjoys swearing and enjoys using swears, but again, the word contextually can be used in so many different ways.
Yeah, 100%.
And people just know what you're talking about.
It can be a verb or an adjective or a noun. Like, it can do all of those things. You can use it in nounal phrases, but it's also a great adjective. It's a great word. It's a great word.
What helps especially is that you can use other words, like obviously like shit and so on, and you can use them in certain ways. And if you try to interplace them, they don't work. So fuck can only be used in certain ways, and shit can only be used in certain ways. There was a point someone made, I think it was on Reddit, that it was a non-native English speaker learning English, and then he got to learning swears. Yeah. And he was making a list that he like messaged one of his friends about, an English speaker, and he said, so there's different types of animal shit means different things. And it was like, and it correlated them.
Oh,
and you don't think about it. So like dog shit, bad. bullshit, lie. Ape shit, crazy or mad. There was other ones as well, but like again, we say this to each other. We just know
that's fucking bullshit, mate. It is so true.
But you don't stop to think why that certain animal excrement has certain human attributes to them.
Yeah.
But there's also, on the topic of swearing, there's a great video, if you can find, of Billy Connolly talking about the word fuck, and specifically his example. He says, no matter what language, because if you notice, non-English speakers who don't learn English
often know fuck.
No English language swears, and especially the one he talks about is regardless of whether you know English or not, or if you can understand an accent or not, if someone turns to you and goes, hey, fuck off, you know exactly what, like the meaning just conveys beyond any kind of linguistic understanding.
There's a really great English language book intended for, I think, Japanese people learning English, which is basically it's a simple English grammar textbook, but every example has fuck in it. Right. And fuck is used in all of the different ways that you can use it. So it's used as an adverb and a verb and an adjective, and it's, do you know what I mean? Like, it's used in all the different ways that we use that word. I think this is a very Sapiens conversation, actually.
Yeah, because we're talking about human language, and that's a big part of the comic.
Yeah, so he goes into what he thinks allowed Sapiens to dominate and become the sole breed of human, or the sole species of human that survived. They think that one of the things that made Sapiens so dominant in terms of all the other human species was actually our capacity for language or communication. So the general consensus now, and this is contrary to, I think, the conversation we've been having about Neanderthals for the longest time, is that Neanderthals had huge brains, much bigger than ours. Neanderthals were probably smarter than we are, or were, at the time. But one of the things that made humans so proliferated was our ability to communicate. And again, it's really fascinating that one of the things they attribute that to is us being bipedal.
Yeah.
So basically, once you stand up on 2 legs as opposed to 4, your hips narrow, which makes childbirth more difficult. And so there was an evolutionary advantage to early humans giving birth to their young a lot younger, which is why human babies are so fucking useless compared to other mammals. Because they're not
freeloader babies.
Well, yeah, because they're not as fully gestated as larger mammals are. And there are mammals that are roughly the same size as us that gestate for a lot longer, and their young comes out with a lot more of their survival instincts intact.
I say giraffes are like just dropped from a height.
As are horses. And, you know, cows and pigs and stuff. And so the idea that actually, because we had these incredibly vulnerable young, and that is literally just an offshoot of us being bipedal and childbirth killing women that went to what originally would have been our full term. That's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we then end up with these complex social structures that need to happen because we need to protect A, our young, and B, the women that are caring for the young. I also really love that one of the things they've observed about Neanderthals is that there are a lot of disabled and old ones. And so they think that Neanderthals were really good at caring for their infirm in a way that early sapiens just weren't.
Yeah.
Which is really beautiful when you think about it.
I think one thing that seemed to help Homo sapiens coming out of Africa and exploring these other places where other subsection of the Homo genus or whatever the term is where they were, was we had a very trial and error approach to trying to compete with them in the same areas. So we would, because it said what are the odds that Homo sapiens would be able to, compete with the Neanderthals that they hadn't met before? And then he says, well, a lot of research says that we didn't. We met them, failed, whether it was not able to survive near them or just beaten by them. And then we failed and left or were killed. But the difference was the Homo sapiens were actually still coming out of Africa to retry. So they were there was a video game where they were reattempting the same level over and over again. And the Neanderthals were just there. They weren't going elsewhere, but we were trial and erroring and getting better each encounter.
And this is where the metaphor about human shit comes in. Because if you throw enough shit at a wall, some of it's going to stick.
And that's evolution in a nutshell.
Well, it is, isn't it? And I think people have this really skewed idea of evolution, again, because most people only learn evolution up to like a secondary school level.
Mm.
And so they have this really simplified view of microorganisms, fish, mammals, humans. And what they don't consider is convergent evolution and the fact that there would have been a bunch of different types of sapiens with different genetic mutations all coexisting. And the way that evolution works is that it's not that evolution is this driving force towards a more perfect species. It's a bunch of random mutations happen, and then one of them sometimes confers an advantage, and those ones survive and they're able to pass their genetic material on.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. That's the only way we can explain why there aren't a bunch of other species of humans about. And one of the things that he does delve into, which I'm sometimes a little bit reticent to enjoy because it's purely speculative and it doesn't really help push an argument along in a meaningful way. It's just quite a fun rhetorical device. Is he speculates as to what the world would be like if another species of human had survived alongside us.
I mean, to be fair, he's a bit late to the party because they did already cover that in the Mario Brothers live action movie. Because they go to a world where the dinosaurs were the dominant species. So the creatures, the civilization are dinosaur based. So, it's good that Mr. Harari got his turn later, he got to dive into it. But the examples of some of the stuff that they talk about, I thought were really clever in some parts. And again, it could be hit and miss because they have to do it so often. But like the prime example I noted was they speak to the guy, again, we were talking about communication being like a human, the Homo sapien tool got a success was communication between us. And when you first meet this character, so he is the scientist or whatever who is an expert in this field, he begins their interaction with Harari and his niece by immediately gossiping. And when you read that, and if you don't know what's about to happen, you go, that's an odd thing to put in. And then as soon as he gets into it, like in the next couple of pages, you go, oh, that's why.
It's a demonstration of a very human trait.
Yeah, and what the scientist argues is a very necessary trait to our success.
Yeah,
it was gossiping while being like frowned upon in modern society was actually this a societal tool for being able to trust each other as a community. Because someone who was gossiped, like to talk about someone else behind their back, it actually kind of inferred to the person receiving the information who could be trusted and who not. And not just trusted in the person giving you information, because, if someone gossips to you, they're gossiping about you. Like, that's the truth. But also, if someone does a bunch of shit, unless they get very publicly called out on it,
gossip.
It's going to be gossip. And you would also notice the people who weren't gossiped about, and you would think, oh, they must be all right. Either they're all right or they are very good at hiding the bad shit that they do.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because we often think of things as being disorders, particularly with this ongoing conversation about neurodivergence and neurotypicals that's happening on certain social media platforms at the moment, and a whole of a generation deciding they've got ADHD. But thought about in evolutionary terms, like those types of neurochemistry must have had an advantage somewhere to survive. For those genes to have been passed along, because we have kind of slowed human evolution down a lot.
Well, our evolution, I think, is a lot more cultural now than it is physical.
Yeah, we're not evolving as fast as a species, or evolution happens so slowly that since we've had an understanding of it, we've not actually seen it happen.
Did you hear that thing? There was a thing going around on the internet a while ago. It might still be. And there was someone, they were talking about smartphones and kids using smartphones. Yeah. And there was a thing going around in the internet. It was like, oh yeah, because a baby was born and instead of pointing with their index finger, they pointed with their thumb. And that's bad because of technology. And I read that. I was like, bollocks. Babies come out, they don't know how to do anything. Yeah. They only learn from looking. So unless they've got parents who are fucking psychopaths pointing at things with their thumbs, like that's the only way you get that. But there's all those little like, oh yeah, this happened. Like you don't understand evolution.
I'm very technophobic, right? Like you know this about me. But also I'm very painfully aware of the response that I currently have to modern technology being the same response that people have always had in history to every technology.
The Luddites.
Well, I mean, the Luddites are a very specific group and they were trying to protect their livelihood, and I'm not going to devalue the working class struggle by mocking the Luddites. But when books were invented, when people when not when books were invented and not when writing was invented.
It must have been invented at some point.
But when writing became affordable, when writing became reasonable, when the materials that we wrote on became cheap enough and good enough that everyone could write things down.
When learning to read and write was not just a characteristic of the elite, of the upper class.
So I'm not talking about when everyone was taught to read and write. I'm talking about the point in time where we stopped scratching shit onto tablets that were really heavy to carry around, and when paper and ink was developed. And so you could just jot something down. And scholars at the time said it was going to ruin human intellectualism because we didn't have to remember everything we knew.
It's going to ruin the stone tablet business.
Well, no,
it's going to... Somebody think of the Masons.
It's going to... No, they thought it was going to ruin our intellectual lives because we wouldn't remember anything anymore. And then when newspapers became affordable, post-printing press, and you could print something that only needed to last for a day, people saying, oh, nobody, there's photographs of people queuing at bus stops all reading, and they say nobody talks anymore because we have newspapers. And then we said the same shit about the radio and TV and smartphones and the internet. Every time we have advanced as a species or we've advanced technologically and a new type of technology has become affordable and thus proliferated through the species, there's always been a bunch of people like me saying it's a bad thing. Like, I'm aware that this is part of a trend. It still doesn't make me like Facebook anymore.
I think the problem is looking at it in terms of good or bad.
Yeah.
And really, it is. Like, it's not... Like, there's always positive and negatives to everything, especially advances in human society and culture.
Yeah.
So to be like, that's bad, it's like, well, yeah, but it's also good. Like, it's everything. Like, there's... To something as complex as a societal shift as good or bad is a very oversimplistic view.
I mean, we've talked about this a lot when we've talked about superhero comics, because they are a representation of our juxtaposed ideas about good and bad and good and evil, right?
Yeah.
But they're just constructs. Good and evil are just constructs. They're ways, they're lenses through which we can view human behavior. And so we've taken a set of behaviors that we generally perceive as negative because they hurt somebody on a societal level, and a bunch of behaviors that generally are positive and ascribe them good or bad. But they are just two different behaviors that we have ascribed these ideas onto, right?
I mean, essentially, good and evil boils down to we like or we don't like.
Yeah,
like, that's
it's
pretty
thumbs
much
up, thumbs down, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like reading this, reading this book the first time round and then more latterly reading the comic has made me think about these things a lot. I feel like this is a really thought-provoking text.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And specifically, adaptation-wise, and we've not had a great history with adaptations.
No,
so
not
this
on the
is
podcast.
probably unless we're missing one, and we'll do a best adaptation at the end of the year, and it won't even necessarily be like from 2023 or whatever. It'll just be ones that we've read. So we'll have like one holding the title for like all the years we do the podcast. I think this is a shoo-in for this year, and potentially for years to come, it might continue to hold the title.
Yeah, it would take something really... I mean, the only comic book that we've read that I think even gets close to this in vibe is Mouse.
Yes, and that was not an adaptation because that was a direct
so it
source.
wasn't... Yeah, I suppose... I'm thinking in terms of a piece of non-fiction.
Yeah.
Because even though Mouse is fiction, it is it's biographical, isn't it?
Yeah. And the narrative is constructed even though it happened as it happened.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we really got into there was how cleverly constructed the narrative was. And I think that's a feature here, is the narrative around these ideas has been beautifully constructed to convey the information it wants to convey.
Mm.
And that's really cool. Like, that's objectively quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, I'm super surprised that there haven't been more of these. Like, I think maybe... I mean, there's a couple of people, there must be some pop scientists or pop historians whose work would do really well in this medium.
I mean, as I said, this could be an entire series akin to, like we said, horrible histories and horrible sciences as well. Because you could anthropomorphize, any kind of thing like chemicals or particles and things like that, and like you could have, these particles repel each other, or magnetism is just two particles who like hate each other or something. Like that's me pulling at my ass, and I'm not good at this.
I actually learned about magnets recently
from Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, where I get all my information.
Yeah.
No, magnets are more magnets are actually really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, they're magic, so they have to be, right?
They are quite literally magic. Also, the planet is a big magnet.
I mean, if we're talking about gravity, yes.
No, the planet is a big magnet.
Okay.
So some stuff happens in our mantle.
Are you talking about the poles?
Yeah.
Right.
But
not the Polish, the
oh, right.
the actual poles of the planet.
So, just for a quick, this is a thing that interested Jamie recently.
Right.
You know, we have a north and south pole to the planet, and there is
hey, slow down, Brett Poindexter. Hang on, let me grapple with this.
You know, there's a magnetic north and a magnetic south, right? Yeah. So we number runways in airports on how many degrees away from north they are.
Right.
And so when you approach an airport, you know that the number of the runway you are approaching is numbered based on how many degrees away from north it is. So that if you're coming in and it's foggy and you can't see anything, you can pull your fucking compass out, point to that many degrees, and you're going to land. Right? Like, it's a fail-safe. It's the way that they're numbered. But the Canadians don't use magnetic north anymore. They use true north because the pole is the actual magnetic north is moving so much that all of the numbers on their airports were becoming incorrect every 5 to 10 years. And so they were having to renumber their airports, their runways, because they were basing them all on magnetic north, which kept fucking moving.
Wasn't there a thing a while ago about how the poles switch every, 100?
And we think it's coming.
Oh, we still think it's coming?
Yeah, no, it's coming.
Right.
It's coming because...
I didn't know if it was like the Mayan apocalypse where it happened and nothing happened.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen because the last time it happened was... We think the last time it happened was pre-human history.
Do you know how they know that they switch?
Yes, it is... There is a big dip in the magnetic force of the planet. So there's a huge change in the magnetic force of the planet that's happening at the moment. And so at some point, the polarity is going to switch.
I was actually going to go mention something else. It's how when they dig deep into the Earth's crust, and they have there's different layer formations over about tens, hundreds of thousands of years. And they notice that with a new layer, or at some point during the layer formation, the minerals would switch direction. So the minerals in kind of free form would, as you say, magnetize and would point to north or south.
Yeah.
And then as the layers caught up, they would literally dig through these layers like modern day, and you could see the layers. They'd switch and then switch and then switch, and they go, oh, the poles must reverse or switch places.
And that wouldn't have been such a big deal if it weren't for the fact that so much of our technology is reliant on electricity. And electricity is just an expression of electromagnetism.
Mm.
Like, electricity is magnets. They are the same force.
I'm honestly surprised that at this stage, we still haven't had a apocalyptic action movie based on that happening. Starring...
Should we cut this out of the podcast so that we can write it?
I mean... Honestly, I think that work is beneath us. I think it's too easy. It's like, you just start off, you just go, so The Rock, or Mark Wahlberg... One of those.
Or Keanu.
Keanu's better than that, I think. He loves that choreography.
But this is more of an intellectual thriller.
No, it's San Andreas was not an intellectual thriller. It was there's a fuck off earthquake and The Rock is a pilot or something. That was pretty much it.
What job would The Rock would be a geologist in this?
The Rock would be a geologist. He would not go for that for the obvious reasons.
I think it would be funny.
He doesn't want to be The Rock doesn't want to be typecast as The Rock guy. Unless he has a great sense of humor, which he might, and it's all like a meme movie, basically. Yeah. The Rock as a geologist would on the poster, that'd sell it itself.
It's fucking great. I think we've written it.
I think we've got 3 weeks before this podcast episode comes out. We're going to write the movie before then. We're just going to take San Andreas and we're just going to copy and paste.
You know how radio plays used to be a thing?
Yeah.
We could do an episode of the podcast where we do a dramatic reenactment of our script.
Oh no, the poles are switching.
And there's like a countdown and The Rock has to do something before it happens.
But the problem is, do we go the Hollywood route where we just make it all up? Or do we go the semi-Hollywood route and we consult a scientist and go, so what would happen? Or what do you think would happen? And then we write it like that.
Nobody knows.
So if we just make up anything.
There isn't a strong... I'd say I did a little bit of research on this. So again, if you are an expert in electromagnetism and the polarity of Earth...
Or Magneto from the X-Men.
And you know about this stuff, write in at comicliterate@gmail.com because it's something that I'm currently quite interested in and I would love to hear from you.
We could submit a spec script to Marvel and it's a Magneto solo series.
Whoa!
And
for Disney Plus.
The pole switch and everything else that everyone's like, it's like Y2J. It's like, we think something, Y2K.
Yeah.
Y2J is Chris Jericho from WWE. It's like Y2K. And they like, oh my God, like we have to prepare. We don't know what's going to happen. And then it's all fine. But Magneto loses his powers and he's like, oh, fuck. Like, what do I do now?
There's a run in that, isn't there?
Yeah, Magneto lost his powers.
We need to get Tom King on it.
Oh, yeah, he's the best. We could replicate the Tom King style. All we need to do is do 3x3 panels.
Yeah,
and we're golden.
100%.
Incidentally, there's a couple of Tom King books that I'm looking forward to reading. One is an adaptation of Animal Farm.
Yeah,
Animal Pan,
I'm psyched for that as well.
He's also just started recently a Penguin solo series, and it looks really fun.
What, is in the little orange paperback books?
Yeah, he's writing for Penguin.
Imagine if he was.
I mean, there wouldn't be as much like panel layout that we could boast of. He couldn't do, and I say this as a big Tom King fan, but if he can't do 3x3 page layouts, I don't think he does it.
Yeah, no, is that in his contract?
I mean, you've read Women of Tomorrow, so
yeah, no, it's all about that. As a side note, you know Penguin Classics?
Yes, I'm aware.
So Morrissey's autobiography got published as a Penguin Classic or a Penguin Modern Classic from the outset. And the community of writers that have had their work republished as Penguin Modern Classics got really pissy about it. Because, so to be a modern classic, it generally needs to be something that either did really well or was really critically acclaimed or is just really good. And then they republish it with a black cover in that imprint. But Morrissey's autobiography got put out as a modern classic from, like, its first publication was a modern classic. And the community around that particular imprint got really upset by it, and I find it hilarious.
Even just from a pedantic, like I see where they're coming from a pedantic viewpoint. It's like releasing a film and be like, this is an instant classic. And you're like, no one's seen it yet. Like, you can't say that. And also, a film that everyone loves that's just come out is not a classic. Like you say, it has to age a bit, doesn't it? It's like a wine or whiskey. I think that's how those work.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. But yeah, I see where they're coming from, and also Morrissey apparently is a bit of an asshole anyway. So,
I mean, I think there's a beauty to the fact that I love the Smiths, right? Like, I love Morrissey's poetry, but he is a racist piece of shit. And so, like, do you know about the thing that he did in America?
No.
He turned up to an American talk show with a Britain First pin badge on his suit.
Ugh.
And obviously all the English people watching were like, oh, I know what that is. That's disgusting. And so yeah, Morrissey's not widely liked in the culture at the moment. For obvious reasons.
It's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's all right to be patriotic, but there's a certain level where even if you're of the same nationality or country or citizenship, whatever, certain level where you go, you're going a bit too far now.
I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about how in other European countries, they're quite, patriotism in other countries is a bit more common. And actually, any level of English patriotism just feels a bit icky.
Yeah, if someone's got like a actual Union Jack hung up.
Oh, God.
But you know what's worse? What's worse?
Cross of St. George.
The English flag, yeah.
Ugh. Like, if you go north of the border, right, and you see a bunch of Scottish flags, you're like, that's cool.
Yeah, good on them. Welsh flags, brilliant.
Yeah, the Welsh flag's a good one as well. Yeah. Do you know the Irish don't have a flag?
That's crazy. I don't know. Do you know what?
There is a flag that is commonly used,
but it's not the official. No one's got around to officiating it yet.
Well, so it was the Ulster banner, and it was used for like an important royal visit or something in the 50s. But then obviously Ireland stopped being a country in the way it was a country since then because of the Troubles and everything that happened. Mm. And when the new country of the Republic of Ireland was established, they never gave it a flag. And so the Ulster banner is like commonly used, and you'd recognise it. It's a white banner with a red hand in it. And that has a lot of historical significance. And there's like a royal crest with a Scottish lion and a stag, and the Ulster Scots are a big thing. So thematically, it all makes sense, and it's quite a good flag.
Scottish flag?
Well, no. So there's in the Ulster banner,
right.
There's a nod to the Ulster Scots.
Yeah.
Because obviously there's a big link between the Irish and the Scottish. There was a lot of migration between the two.
Mm.
I forget which era. But yeah, there's a big link between Ireland and Scotland, hence why a lot of Irish stuff is quite firmly linked to the Rangers Celtic thing, which is, you know what I mean? Like, there's a big link between all the movements, all the stuff. I won't get into it because it's messy. It's the Troubles. But yeah, the Ulster banner is commonly used as the Irish flag, but it is not the Irish flag. The Irish just don't have a flag, mate.
Do you know what the official animal of Scotland is?
Yes, it's the unicorn.
That's mental. Like,
it is, yes.
That they picked one. I mean, Wales has a dragon, right?
Yes.
But I feel like the dragon is a little more like entrenched in lore and, you know, historical mythology.
I mean, there were dragons in Wales until 1954, until the English flooded that reservoir.
Yeah, you've seen Game of Thrones. You know. Snoop Dogg famously was like, I can't believe they made all this shit happen in previous times. And everyone's like, who wants to be the one to tell them?
Oh, Snoop.
I feel like telling a child that Santa isn't real. Like,
yeah, telling Snoop Dogg that we don't have dragons. Matt, I mean, to be honest with you, if you had that conversation with Snoop Dogg, you know you'd both be out of this world high and it would be magnificent.
Yeah, you get high just being near Snoop. I think that's how it works.
His
now.
Aura just emanates pure THC.
Yeah. I think I might have to put a time code in the description when we stop talking about the comic.
At what point did it happen, though? It was quite a while ago.
I'll listen back in the edit and I'll go like, this seems like the point where the topic stops.
Jamie goes on a rant about electromagnetism and flags.
And we went from there.
Vexillology.
Do you know, interestingly, on Reddit, there's whatever type of subject or topic or hobby that you can think of. Reddit has done a thing where there's a circle jerk version of that same subreddit. I'm on some of the comic circle jerks, and it's good to see. It's just basically them like shit posting and bitching about or like laughing about. You know, it's the opposite of serious.
Yeah.
The one that surprised me was the Vexology circle jerk sub.
If you want to giggle, if you want to look at some bad flags, look at the American state flags, and there's a country in Africa that just have the worst flag for their counties. One moment. You keep talking. I'm going to find them up because they are like well worth a look.
I mean, you've absolutely left me hanging, but I'll continue on the subreddit part. If you're looking for a chess circle jerk, for some reason that one, I mean, there might be chess circle jerk, but you want to go anarchy chess. That's the one where they just do the same memes and jokes over and over again. And I don't know anything about chess at all, but I learned more from the shit posting subreddit than I did any actual chess information.
I mean, chess is fascinating.
Chess is interesting, but it's too complex for me and my simple mind.
It's not, though. So I play chess and I love chess. You just haven't played enough chess. Because
certainly.
You are the type of person who would find the world of chess infinitely compelling.
Yeah, are you talking about the lore of chess or the actual act of playing chess?
Both, man. Like the stuff that goes on in and around professional chess is really interesting. And the way that the game is constantly evolving, but also isn't really evolving because of how good the engine is. Do you know the chess engine?
No, obviously not.
So chess.com is the website that we all play chess on.
Okay.
And they have a bot. There's an AI that you can play against. And the chess engine is so good now that most grandmasters can't play against it.
At its highest level, I'm assuming.
Yeah, because you can nerf it and when you go on chess.com, it gives you different players to play against. And one of them's like, he's a dad, but he's nice, and he's teaching you how to play chess, and so he'll be really forgiving. And then there is...
Much like the comic we were talking about, it anthropomorphizes. Yes, that's what I said.
Anthropomorphizes the chess engine to be different people that you can play.
Yeah.
But obviously...
This is the Grand Master. He's an absolute arsehole, and he'll laugh at you when you lose. That's the top level.
Magnus Carlsen, who is the highest ranked chess grandmaster at the moment, he's a very, very competent chess player. He made his own app, which is basically an AI that you can play against. But because obviously chess games are infinitely recorded, like you can go online and you can get a move by move for every professional chess game that's ever happened, pretty much.
Yeah.
And so you can play Magnus at 9, and you can play Magnus at 12, and you can play Magnus at 18. And there is a video of Magnus Carlsen struggling to beat himself at 12
Mm.
because he was such a good chess player, and the engines can just absorb all of that and play almost exactly the way he would have done at that age. Chess is fascinating, mate. You'd love it. Again, chess is a great, going back to the text a little bit and talking about anthropology and the Anthropocene, chess is a really beautiful expression of the Anthropocene.
Do tell.
Well, you know, I mean, chess is a game that came from like China and India, and then it grew and changed, and it became popular in different places, and different countries added their own things. Like, chess became popular in England at a point where we had a queen, and so the queen was originally the vizier, and it was a piece that had all the same powers as the king, only it couldn't be put in check, right? So it could go everywhere on the board in the way that the queen currently can, but it could only move one space at a time, right? But at that time in England, it became a really popular parlour game, and somebody wanting to curry favour with the Queen said, what if we make this piece a lot more powerful and we rename it the Queen?
Mm.
And royalty played the game, and royalty loved it.
The modern version of that would be making the current king's Fortnite character really powerful.
Imagine Charles III with his sausage fingers on Fortnite.
That's a 1-to-1 comparison.
No, legit. Like, literally, you are nailing it. But yeah, no, and suddenly the dynamics of the game changed vastly, and it became the game it is now, and it became this incredibly compelling game. And so chess is something that evolved and changed with humans, and it can be seen as a representation of tactical war, but it can also be seen as a metaphor for the class struggle, and different pieces mean different things. The bishops are obviously representative of the church, and the knights are like the powerful barons, and the pawns are the proletariat. And so chess is like historically and historiographically really fascinating.
I have my favorite chess reference, which is, well, there's two. One is from The Wire, when one of the characters, I can't remember if it's D'Angelo or D'Angelo is if he's the uncle or the nephew. He's one of the two. He's a Barksdale, but he's one of the character. He's like a mid-level drug dealer in The Wire, and he has these lower level dealers who he's showing chess because they're using a chessboard. They're using a chess app to play checkers.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll show you how to play chess. And he's talking about like the uses of all the figures. And he talks about the pawns. And he said, the pawns you can, just like sacrifice and use to get people into position and that kind of stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, but like what if a pawn like got really powerful or whatever? And he's like, and there is the thing in chess is a pawn gets the other side, it becomes a queen.
Well, it can become anything.
And a queen naturally because it's
you
the most...
always queen it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they don't get into that because the character D'Angelo is just like, pawns aren't really for that or whatever. Like they're more for sacrifice stuff. And it's the hidden layer of you are a pawn level. Like you are to be sacrificed. That is the game within The Wire. And the other one is Funny or Die did The Wire the musical, and they got the same actor in this skit, and he does the song of chess is a metaphor for drug dealing. Those are my two favorites.
I suppose what's fascinating there is that it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about creating a narrative around facts, right?
Mm.
Because he created a narrative there that the pawns are unimportant. Actually, once you play a bit of chess, you realise that the pawns are your most important pieces. Because the pawns are what you use to control the board so that your other pieces can do what they need to do. And so if you don't make a good solid structure with your pawns in your opening, your mid game and your end game is going to crumble because all of a sudden there's all these holes in your defenses. So actually what he's saying is kind of correct. Your pawns are your least valuable pieces and you can sacrifice them when you need to. And if it's a choice between sacking a pawn or a higher value piece, you'll generally sack your pawn. But actually, your pawns are what create your structure. And once you get into high level chess, it's the pawns that win or lose games. Like you'll be at an end game, and they'll be like, you'll be watching two grandmasters play. They'll be like, oh yeah, but he's got a couple more pawns. He's going to win. Because he has got the structure still. He's got a little bit of structure left around his major and minor pieces. And so, like, it's the idea that he had a narrative that he wanted to give these people, and he used chess as an example and made it fit his narrative, even though the facts of that situation were something different.
I think two things. One, what you're saying is that Marx was correct. I'm getting from that. And
that's what I'm always saying, Ryan.
secondly, I think I'm going to put like more time codes for the subjects that we've gone on tangents on for the past half hour. And this one, I think, is just going to say, then they talk about chess for some reason. And that's the title of this part.
Do you know, when you do YouTube videos, you can break them up and you can actually have little points that it'll like notches that you can hard fast forward to.
Oh, yeah.
You should definitely do that for this one on the, because I don't know if you know this, guys, this stuff gets uploaded to YouTube for some reason.
Yeah. And pretty much you can add that suffix to everything we do.
Yeah.
We made a podcast for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why we do it, but I like it.
I mean, we're here now. We're entrenched, so we got to keep going.
Do you have any more wider points that can bring us back on topic? I know you always have a list.
I have actually somewhat exhausted the list, and that is somewhat to do with, as I said, we were mainly talking about the techniques and the devices used within the comic. But I think we've covered it as extensively as we can from the perspective that we're coming at it.
I suppose I have two questions for you. Would you keep reading?
I think... So my thing is, like, you know me, I'm making effort to keep up to date on not fictional comics.
Yeah.
So for this, I tell you what, if I was going for a non-fictional read, for obvious reasons, this would be probably my first choice because it's that crossover appeal of, you know, understanding, seeing the visual examples of things. And again, it's just an easier read. Like, I think I could read the original, like the original book and go on with it. But I think I'd find that more interesting than trying to think of I'm trying to think of like two different ways of interest. I think I would find the book consciously interesting, and I found the comic to be engagingly interesting. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, so it was really engaging and you were still getting what you would have gotten from the book in some way, right?
Exactly, yeah. And also the personalization just makes any kind of conveying information a bit nicer. Like the relationship between Harari and his niece, who may or may not exist, we generally have no idea. But the relationship just makes it a nicer, more enjoyable read. And I think there is going to be, unfortunately, a bit of a... not a persecution, but you know what I mean, like a judgment of an adult reading this instead of the book. I think that's going to be a thing. And I personally, I think whatever like medium you want to get the information in, like do it. Like
you're learning. Like it's only important to me that people learn.
Exactly.
And it is like, we don't really get into this, like our personal philosophies. But I think education is one of the ways that one of the things that holds humanity together, right? Like there's a reason that some of your taxes go towards schools, even if you're somebody who never wants kids. And it's because living in a society with more highly educated people is always going to benefit you.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, like, the idea that something as timely and as important and broad and interesting as this book has been condensed into a form that's more easily digestible for people, I think is a net positive.
Exactly. And yeah, I think when it comes to like what method by which you get the information in, like this, to me, this one is incredibly as valid because you're not just searching out the hard facts. You are wanting an entertaining, educational read.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I think we look down on, as a society, we look down on people who want entertainment with their education.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if we were more accepting of that as a society, I think more people would be educated.
Yeah.
I think there'd be more of an industry behind that type of literature. And yeah, so this is a prime example of, I think, why not just young adults, but adults like us and all the people, if you want to learn and have fun at the same time, you know, that old bollocks, this is a good example of that.
Well, I think it's really interesting because we look down on it, but then when somebody makes it, the educational community as a whole grab onto it.
Well, the educational community are probably the last people to look down on. It's the non-educational intellectuals or the pseudo-intellectuals. Those are the people I think they're like, I read Infinite Jest in one sitting, like those kind of people. Like,
have you read Infinite Jest?
Obviously not.
It's a hot mess.
I tell you what, an Infinite Jest comic, that'd be great.
David Foster Wallace is dead now, isn't he?
Yes.
So we could probably make that happen quite easily.
I mean, so we need to commission smarter people than ourselves to interpret it. And
Al Ewing. Al Ewing and Tom King together.
Oh, Tom King would love that bollocks, I reckon.
He would be great at it.
Yeah.
Who's the one that I really like?
Alan Moore.
No. I mean, yeah, obviously. But no, there's one who's like popped up a couple times since we've been doing this who I really liked. He did Something's Killing the Children.
Oh, Tyrion something the fourth or something Tyrion.
The guy who did Something's Killing the Children and
he also did Nice House on the Lake.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
He'd
but
be really good at
he
it.
seems to be quite ingrained in his fiction. Like his art especially. I mean, they all are, to the ones we've read, obviously. But, I mean, get the writer and... Sorry, I'll bring up their names again so we top and tail the episode.
Yeah.
Not Harari, because obviously he's like very specifically
He's probably busy doing something else at this point.
And he's very specifically this information.
He did write a sequel, though.
Maybe we'll get around to that if and when. They should get, if you want Infinite Jest, for some reason we're on this, as a comic adaptation, or any educational comic adaptation, you should get David Vandermeulen and Daniel Casanave. Get the writer and illustrator, get those two, because they've done a great job here, and I'd like to see... I'm not so much like, what's Harari doing next? Because that's not as much of the appeal.
Yeah.
But if they were making something else educational or something else, a non-fiction comic, I'd be very intrigued to see what else they might do.
I would love to delve a bit deeper into non-fiction comics, but I just don't think there are that many of them about.
There aren't that many, and unfortunately they don't drive as much traffic to the early stages of this podcast.
No, this was an episode for me, wasn't it? Really?
For you, and also one thing I was going to sum up was, if you're a comic reader and you do want something just a little bit different to break up the constant superheroes, but even just the varying levels of fiction and different styles and everything like that, this feels like a bit of a breath of fresh air to kind of slot in the middle. You might not then suddenly only read non-fictional comics, however many there may or may not be in the world.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a nice kind of break from fictional comics.
And this and I felt like this book contextualized a lot of ideas that I'd seen in other places for me, and it brought together a lot of knowledge from a lot of different areas. And I think it's a good one just to have in your information diet.
Yeah.
I think about my information diet a lot these days because of social media. I know you do too. You're quite conscious about the TV you watch, for example.
Yeah,
which is you being conscious about your information diet, isn't it?
To be honest, mine's more of like a quality diet. Like, and again, with comics as well. Like, I was literally thinking this earlier. I have such a lower threshold for lower tolerance for just bad, uninspired writing. Like, even if it's like
since doing the podcast, or just as you get older,
bit of both. Because I would find myself just reading comics. Like, I dropped off comics a bit before we started this podcast, and it was because I was reading so many that I had this like feeling that I needed to read. If they were about characters I liked, I just had to keep up with them. And it got to a point where I was just like, I burn out on like trying to keep up with all those comics. And then now starting the podcast, I was like, well, why don't I just read the ones that I actually enjoy and enthusiastic about?
And again, like I read comics for a bit with you when we worked together because they just fitted what I wanted for certain times at the time, and then only really kept up with like Saga thereafter.
Oh, I'm so behind on Saga.
Me too. But what like making this with you has definitely meant that there are just more comics in my information diet at the moment. And yeah, I think this one is like just a great read. Like, it's just an interesting thing to have read. A lot of big fun, interesting ideas to grapple with. Like, I just think if you're into comics, it'll be good for you.
Yeah, and I think, even if you don't like the idea of whatever, this is one of those things I say, just give it a try, because even if you only read 10 pages, that's 10 pages of just information that you might learn and carry with you. Even if you stop after then, it's just a little bit extra to take in, as opposed to the same old Batman's bloody Gotham's in trouble again, or Spider-Man's having a crisis of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get a little bit of this just in between. I'm not telling you to give up anything, but just get this in your diet a little bit as well. This is like a nice apple in between all the junk food for lack of a better term. Yeah.
So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I know this has been a bit of a weird episode.
It's basically been a God, I forgot the title now. A barely literate episode
Yeah,
within a
kind
comic
of.
literate episode.
So thank you so much for sticking with us. If you have stuck with us till now, please send us an email at comicliterate@gmail.com telling us why you stuck with us this long. Because my God, do we need the feedback.
Or why you think we're wrong about anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts from. We do stuff on YouTube. It's fun. We like it. We think you might like it too.
Specifically right now, YouTube Shorts and TikTok. For some reason, we've got one short that's just gone absolutely gangbusters on TikTok.
Yeah, I know, right?
I have no idea what separates it from the others. But
We've currently got a team of scientists trying to reverse engineer that one.
I'm happy for the success either way.
Thank you so much for listening and good night.
Thank you. Goodbye.